Welcome to Trauma Demystified, a podcast brought to you by Bright Horizon Therapies. I am Natalie Jovanic, a trauma counselor and resilience coach, and I'll be your host on this journey. In today's episode, we'll explore how to create safety after childhood trauma. This episode is primarily for adults who have experienced childhood abuse or neglect, though it may also resonate with anyone healing from complex trauma. As I mentioned in previous episodes, re-establishing safety is a vital part of trauma recovery. But what does safety actually mean? I don't know about you, but when I began my healing journey, I did not have a clear concept of safety. For many people who have experienced relational trauma, feeling safe, especially in relationships, can be deeply unfamiliar. Whether your trauma stems from abuse, neglect, discrimination, or racism, these experiences are inherently unsafe. So if you struggle to feel secure in your relationships or the world around you, know that you're not alone. That response is a natural result of what you've lived through. In this episode, I'll explore what safety can look like after childhood trauma and share practical strategies to increase your sense of safety. As always, trust your intuition, take what resonates, and leave the rest. Creating safety is a layered, ongoing inner journey. It's rarely as black and white as psychology sometimes makes it seem. Like physical fitness, it requires consistent practice, patience, and a commitment to growth. Over time, you will build greater mastery and feel more empowered in your everyday life. So what are the dimensions of safety? Before we dive into the different dimensions of safety, here are a few essential things to keep in mind. Safety is a deeply personal experience. There isn't a one-size-fits-all definition. What feels safe to one person may not feel safe to another. As you move through a healing journey, your sense of what safety means may shift and evolve. That's not only okay, that's an integral part of recovery. So the following dimensions of safety are meant to guide you in exploring your relationship with safety. Let them support your reflection, but always return to what feels true to you. Your lived experience, your needs and boundaries matter, and your definition of safety needs to honor that. Let's look at physical safety. Physical safety means that immediate harm is absent and that you know, at least on some level, that you're safe in your environment. Even if certain parts of you don't feel safe, your surroundings are free from physical danger. Physical safety includes clear boundaries around physical touch and full consent regarding touch and any sexual activity. It also means that physical violence, such as hitting, kicking, or other forms of physical aggression, are absent. Establishing physical safety is often the first step in trauma recovery. If you're currently in an abusive relationship, it's usually best to prioritize increasing your physical safety before engaging in deeper healing work. It is essential to recognize that physical safety is not entirely within your control. For example, you cannot always prevent someone else from being violent, but you can choose how you respond. If you have experienced childhood abuse, your ability to protect yourself may feel compromised, especially if certain situations activate old trauma responses. In these moments, please reach out to professional support to do what's best for you and to find the support that can help you to work through that. But I haven't personally experienced physical abuse in a relationship as an adult. I have made myself a promise very early on. If I ever found myself in a physical abusive relationship, I would immediately seek counseling support. This is one way how I protect and care for myself, and I offer it here as a possible step for others so that you can consider it too. So here are some reflective questions about physical safety. So for example, you can ask yourself, do I feel physically safe in my current environment, in my home, in my work, or in my community? Is my body respected, especially regarding personal space, touch, and consent? Am I free from physical harm, threats, or intimidation in my relationships? Can I say no to physical contact and sexual activity without fear of negative consequences? Do I have the ability to leave or remove myself from unsafe situations when needed? Do I notice signs of tension or fear in my body around certain people or places? So the important thing is that you're curious about your inner experience, and then you really start evaluating what is going on for you. Now let's look at emotional safety. Emotional safety means you can be yourself, express your feelings, and trust that you won't be judged or rejected. You feel seen, accepted, and validated for who you are. Emotional safety is a cornerstone for healthy relationships, including the therapeutic relationship with a mental health professional. Healthy boundaries play a key role in creating emotional safety. Boundaries help protect you in relationships and give you the ability to respond when someone crosses a line. This doesn't mean you'll never feel hurt again, but it means you can take care of yourself and set limits. That's why boundary work is such an essential part of trauma recovery. Here are 2 questions that can help you assess your emotional safety. Can I share my true feelings without fear of being judged, shamed, or dismissed? How do people respond when I'm vulnerable? Are they supportive, or do they dismiss and invalidate my feelings? How do people respond when I'm struggling? Is their behavior healthy? So last but not least, let's look at psychological safety. Psychological safety is closely connected with emotional safety, but it focuses more on respect. You experience psychological safety when you can speak up, share your thoughts, disagree, or admit mistakes without fearing ridicule, shame, dismissal, or rejection. It's about knowing that your voice matters and that others will respectfully treat your thoughts and feelings. You can reflect on psychological safety by asking yourself, do I feel safe enough to express my thoughts and emotions? How do others respond when I share my experiences or opinions? Is their behavior respectful towards me? So the important part is that you feel respected. It doesn't matter whether another person thinks that they are respectful towards you. So feeling respected is an inner sense in your body. An important note before we dive deeper: all aspects of safety, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, aren't entirely within your control. While we can build inner resilience and tools, physical, emotional, and psychological safety also depends on how others treat us. If someone repeatedly dismisses your needs or boundaries, it's worth paying attention. Your experience matters. Feeling safe is not just about coping, but also about connecting with people who respect your needs and your boundaries. Another aspect of safety is that social dynamics, particularly privilege, deeply influence your experience of physical, emotional, and psychological safety. In this context, privilege refers to individuals' unearned advantages due to their membership in a dominant social group. These advantages affect how safe a person feels and how easily they can access environments that support their well-being. The more privilege a person holds, the easier it is to establish emotional and psychological safety. For example, in white-dominated societies, Black individuals tend to face greater threats for their safety. Similarly, trans and gender-diverse folks are generally less safe than cisgender people. Please note that these are just a few examples to give you an idea, and they don't represent the complete picture of oppression. While these dynamics are harmful and not okay, they impose another unfair loss and emotional burden on people with marginalized identities. Recognizing these dynamics is crucial if you hold one or more marginalized identities. Learning to navigate harmful or toxic dynamics in the dominant group settings is often a necessary part of healing. For instance, while I hold white and settler privilege and have more safety than BIPOC individuals, I'm also a non-binary immigrant in Canada, and I have been in environments that weren't emotionally or psychologically safe for me. Part of my healing has involved building the skills to protect my well-being while navigating systems that weren't designed for me. Being targeted by oppression is harmful, and oppression, while prevalent, is not okay. But it also doesn't mean you are powerless or that emotional and psychological safety are entirely out of reach. It means you may need different strategies, more support, and a deeper awareness of how to move through unsafe dynamics while honoring yourself. So now look at the one dimension we have control over: This dimension is self-safety. At its core, healing from trauma is mainly about increasing self-safety. This means developing the ability to assess your inner experience, relationships, and environments to determine how safe they truly are for you. While you can't always control other people's behavior, you can build your capacity to care for yourself and to protect yourself. Self-safety is also about increasing confidence in your ability to set boundaries and making decisions to support your well-being. Furthermore, it's about learning to trust yourself and your intuition. Since these abilities often get disrupted after trauma, rebuilding them is essential for your healing and your sense of empowerment. Now let's look at the definition of safety. When I began my healing journey, I had the naive idea that being healed meant I would always be safe. Over the years, I've understood that safety isn't a permanent state. It's about being safe in this moment. I can't predict the future, and while I hope to remain safe, what matters most is trusting my ability to protect myself and to care for my well-being if someone jeopardizes it. For me, this also includes creating safety plans when needed, even though I hope that I will never need them. Additionally, safety is deeply connected to respecting myself and honoring my boundaries. Knowing I can show up for myself, even in challenging situations, is vital to feeling safe in my body and in my life. So here are some ideas on how you can start to create your definition of safety. So after what you heard today, what is safety for you? And why does it matter for you? How do you notice in your body when you feel safe? How do you notice when you don't feel safe? Who or what contributes to your sense of safety? And who or what diminishes it? Remember, your definition of safety may change over time. So it's natural that you may revisit this quite often and just adjust it to the state and the learnings you have made during this period. So now let's look at different strategies on how we can increase our sense of safety. And the first one is that we develop the skill to really assess our situations and self-assess ourselves, and that we reflect on safety and those moments when we don't feel safe. So since trauma affects our sense of inner safety, we sometimes may not feel safe in situations that actually are safe. And sometimes we may not feel safe and it's true that the situation is not safe. So it's really about learning to assess what is going on in your life. So the journey to really create safety is a continuous growth journey. And it really involves healing trauma, setting healthy boundaries, and learning to assess your environment, and also developing trust in your emotions and your intuition. So assessing your safety involves several interconnected layers. First of all, assess your safety in the present moment. If you feel unsafe, acknowledge that feeling and also explore what's going on in your environment right now. So you can ask yourself, am I exposed to a real threat in this moment, or am I likely safe? So for example, when I am alone in my apartment and I feel unsafe, there's no real threat present. So it's likely that this feeling is a response to something that happened in the past. So suppose I'm talking to someone who is yelling at me and blaming me over the phone. In that case, there's a threat, perhaps not to my physical safety, but to my emotional or psychological safety. So really, the sense of safety requires a continuous self-reflection. The other layer is that you check in with your nervous system. The more dysregulated your nervous system feels, the less safe you are likely to feel, regardless of your external circumstances. Past trauma can keep the nervous system in a chronic state of alert. So part of healing really involves gradually increasing your internal sense of safety and working with your nervous system so that you can go back to your window of tolerance. The next step is to learn to evaluate your relationships. Toxic or abusive relationships are inherently unsafe, though the level may really vary. They exist on a spectrum. For example, boundaries are often ignored in toxic dynamics, and your vulnerability may be used against you. Recognizing these patterns and adjusting your strategies accordingly matters to increase your safety. There is a big difference between feeling unsafe, setting a boundary in a healthy relationship, or in a toxic one. In a healthy relationship, the fear may stem from past experiences where setting boundaries led to negative consequences. But in a toxic relationship, the fear may signal a real lack of safety. So really be aware you need to build the muscle to be able to assess relationships. I will explore this in future episode. In the meantime, you can really download my free ebook, Toxic Relationships 101, which really describes toxic dynamics and also strategies on how you can navigate it. And I will put the link in the episode description. So I invite you, think about your sense of safety as a growth process. The more you heal and grow and the more you reflect, the more you feel empowered to increase your safety. The next aspect of safety is our nervous system. So here I explain you polyvagal theory and the path to safety. So polyvagal theory explains the safety as a state of our autonomic nervous system. Our nervous system is constantly scanning for cues of safety and danger in our environment, in our relationships, and in our bodies. This process is called neuroception, and it typically happens outside of our conscious awareness. So one goal for trauma recovery is to create awareness about this unconscious process. This is often called befriending your nervous system. So when we feel safe and connected, our nervous system is in the ventral vagal state. In this state, we feel calm, grounded, curious, and engaged. So this is a really great state to make decisions in. However, if our nervous system perceives a threat, it moves into sympathetic arousal and we are mobilized or we are in a fight or flight state. In this state, we have overwhelming emotions, anger, anxiety, and we feel out of control. So if now your autonomic nervous system perceives a threat as life-threatening, it shifts into dorsal vagal state, and we feel immobilized, shut down, numb, or depressed. So these states really exist on a hierarchy, and this is often visualized as a ladder. So at the top of the ladder, we have ventral vagal state for safety and connection. In the middle, we have sympathetic state, mobilized, fight or flight. And at the bottom, we have dorsal vagal state, immobilized or shut down. If our nervous system gets activated, it must move back up the ladder through the states to return to ventral vagal. Healing doesn't mean you will always stay in safety and connection. Instead, you can return there more easily when the threat has passed. For many trauma survivors, the challenge is that the nervous system gets stuck in the state of sympathetic or dorsal activation, and they have very few experience of the state of safety and connection. So there where it becomes really vital that we befriend our nervous system and create awareness of these states and that we find practices to go back into safety and connection. The first step in connecting with your nervous system is to recognize how the different states of your body feel. So here's a simple exercise that you can do if it resonates with you. If you feel like scared of it or you feel like it just might be too overwhelming, you can also ask a mental health professional to support you. So since I can't see what's going on for you, please take care of yourself throughout the practice. Stop at any time when you feel overwhelmed, numb, or disconnected. I also invite you to choose memory with a very low emotional intensity for this practice, so don't choose your most intense experiences. So we will start in dorsal vagus activation, which is shut down, immobilized state. So I would ask you that you recall a moment when you feel shut down or immobilized, and just recall it in your body for about 10%. And then when you have these memory recalled in your body, ask yourself, what body sensations do you notice? What emotions do you notice? What thoughts do you notice? When you really recognize all of that and you have a sense how the state feels in your body, really gently shake the memory out of your body, really shake your arms, shake your hands, shake your legs and torso to release the experience. So the next memory I would ask you to recall is sympathetic arousal or fight or flight. So really recall a time when you felt activated or in fight or flight. Again, only choose a mild memory and recall it at about 10% intensity. And really give yourself time to notice the memory in your body. And once you have it, ask yourself, what body sensation do you notice? What emotions do you notice? And what thoughts do you notice? And once you have a sense about how it feels in your body, really shake off this experience again out of your body so that you can come to the present. So the last step is that you recall a memory about safety and connection and mental vagal state. So I would invite you that you recall a moment when you felt safe and connected. And it doesn't have to be a big moment. It can be a very, very small one. So maybe it's a moment with a friend, with a pet, or when you were alone in nature. It really doesn't matter. And this time, allow yourself to fully feel the state in your body. And when you have embodied this state, really ask yourself, what body sensations do you notice? What emotions do you notice? What thoughts do you notice? And after you went through this experience, ask yourself, what did you learn about your different states? What have you learned about your nervous system in this exercise? How can this help you notice the state of your nervous system in the future? So now the next question is, if our nervous system is dysregulated, how do we respond? So if you're noticing you're no longer in a state of safety and connection, the first step is to support yourself to return to that state. So once you feel calmer, you can begin to explore what happened. Once again, do the best you can. Like, you really need to respect where you're at in your healing. So if safety and connection is hard to fully access, go there as good as you can. The other thing I want to acknowledge, we often say that if the nervous system is dysregulated, it's a trigger. I want to acknowledge that not all triggers are from the past. Sometimes your body picks up on a real and present danger, such as a cross boundary or something else. Each situation is different and deserves its unique exploration. So apart from taking care of your nervous system, it might also help you if you reflect on the situation. So you can ask yourself, what were the cues of danger that activated this response? To what extent is my nervous system reacting to unresolved cues from the past? To what extent is it connecting to a real threat in the present? Who could I reach out to for support and perspective? What practices can help me to return to a state of safety and connection? So now I will give you some ideas on how you can find practices to reconnect with safety and connection. Please be aware this is a huge topic and there are many different practices out there. So I also would invite you to look for other practices than the ones I mentioned here. So returning to safety and connection in general can feel challenging when we are immobilized or mobilized. So the best approach will really vary from person to person and the specific situation. And so it sometimes really requires experimentation. I have different practices because I notice that some work in some circumstances and others work in others. So what helps one person might not be the same for someone else. So I really invite you to experiment with it and really be curious about what works for you and what doesn't. If you want to learn more about different practices, I also invite you to check out the episodes on polyvagal theory and the window of tolerance, as both of these concepts offer additional helpful practices. So here are some questions and practices that might guide you to reconnect with safety and connection. The first one is people. So ask yourself, who do I feel safe and connected with? Think about people in your life who make you feel grounded and secure. And if you have an idea who this is, how could you reach out to them? If you don't have any people, here's another tip. Pets are often a really wonderful source of safety and connection, so consider spending time with them if you have one. The next question is about activities. So you can ask yourself, what activities help me feel safe and connected? So for example, dancing or listening to my favorite songs can bring me back to a place of safety and connection. Other people like being in nature or writing. So I'm curious what activities or hobbies connect you with a state of safety and connection. And really add these to your list and start practicing them more often if you can. The next question is, what places make me feel connected? So for some people, this place is a cozy corner in their home, bringing them a sense of peace. For myself, it's really going to the zoo because it really gives me a sense of safety and connection. So the question is, what places give you a sense of safety and connection? Another area that you can explore is, what memories bring me a sense of safety and connection? So if you have positive memories, try to revisit them daily, even just for a moment, and try to embody them so that you can really quickly return to them if you are dysregulated. And so these practices really work over time. So you need to do the embodiment in repetition to really get more often in the state of safety and connection. Another strategy that you can use is nurturing safety through affirmations. While affirmations alone are unlikely to release trauma that is stirred in the body, they really can help you shift your mindset and support a more hopeful outlook on your healing journey. I used trauma-informed affirmations during my recovery from childhood and systemic trauma. Though they were just a small part of a larger recovery plan, I found them to be a meaningful support. The key is to choose attainable affirmations, like ones that signify a positive change for you, but that don't feel entirely out of reach. So if you feel absolutely unsafe, it is unlikely that it will work for you if you say, I am safe now. Like, it just will take a lot of time. I also don't recommend pushing through resistance or trying to override parts of you that feel unsafe or that don't want to do affirmations. Like, if this doesn't resonate, please let it go. It's not essential, and you will find other tools that help you. So here are some affirmations and ideas. Please feel free to adapt them so that they resonate for you. So the first one that you can try is, instead of using an affirmation, phrase it like a wish. May I be safe. May I be protected. I found this helpful in my recovery because it just was more accessible because I didn't feel safe at this stage of my recovery. The other thing you can try is, I can learn to protect myself. I can learn to have healthy boundaries. You can also try saying, the worst is over, I'm healing. So please remember that affirmations require strengthening your boundaries and assessing your safety. While they can be beneficial, they don't guarantee that you will always be safe. True safety comes when you learn to trust yourself and to trust your intuition and respond to situation in a way that feels right for you. The next element we can look to is that we befriend those parts of us that feel unsafe. As I mentioned in other episodes, parts where can be a helpful approach to reconnecting with your inner world. In this context, parts can refer to emotions, body sensations, patterns, or roles you are having. They may even be associated with certain ages or stages of your life, such as a 3-year-old part or a 20-year-old part. If this concept doesn't quite resonate, you can think of parts as a recurring pattern. So the recurring pattern of feeling unsafe. So in this practice, I invite you to have a conversation with the part or pattern that feels unsafe. The goal here is to approach it with curiosity and an intention to understand it better. One way to begin is by taking a piece of paper and simply saying, hey, I notice you feel unsafe right now. I want to learn more about what's going on for you. Then allow yourself to write down whatever comes up. Afterwards, validate what the part has expressed. This might look like writing something like, I hear you, I understand that you feel unsafe right now. To guide your conversation, you can ask yourself some of these questions. Like, I notice you feel safe. Can you tell me more about what's going on? What concerns do you have about this situation? What are you afraid of in this moment? What would you need from me to feel safer? Is there a boundary that's being violated right now? Would you like to create a safety plan together? If writing feels challenging, another approach is to use 2 sheets of paper. Label one sheet unsafe and the other one with your name. Place both sheets on the floor and physically move between the two as you ask and answer the question. Stand on the paper labeled with your name when you are asking the questions, and then move to the paper marked unsafe and embody the sense of feeling unsafe as you answer from that perspective. Rotating between the sheets will help you engage with both parts of yourself. Remember, parts work can feel unfamiliar or challenging if you have never done it before. If this practice doesn't quite work for you, that's okay. Consider collaborating with a trusted counselor or trauma-informed coach who can support you through the process. So the next element, which is really important, is increasing safety by strengthening your boundaries. I dive deeper into boundaries in future content, but here's a simplified introduction. Your boundaries protect you from harm and define what's okay for you and what's not. If you have experienced childhood abuse or childhood trauma, you've lived through repetitive boundary violations. Reconnecting with your boundaries becomes a vital inner process. Childhood trauma often disrupts our connection to our body. And because boundaries live in our body, this disconnection can make it difficult to sense, trust, or assert them. That's why it's essential to approach this with gentleness and patience. So here are 2 practices that can support you in strengthening your boundaries. The first one is working with a physical rope. I call it boundary rope visualization. So in this context, take a rope or a string that is long enough to create a circle around you, ideally with about 3 meters radius. So you sit down on the floor and you slowly start to lay the rope around your body. Imagine that the rope represents your personal boundary and that it protects your space. And so once you have built the circle around you, you can really look at the rope and really notice, what do you notice in your body when you see your boundary? How does it feel in your body? And then really notice, does the size feel right for you? Is there something that you need to adjust or change? So sometimes you need to put it on closer to yourself and sometimes you need to put it farther away from yourself. So really play with the circle, make it smaller, make it larger, and then just tune into your body and just notice, what do you notice inside? So this practice can really help to establish a sense of our boundaries over time. And you can return to this practice whenever you feel unsafe or when your boundaries have been crossed. So I still use it myself sometimes, especially in moments when it was complicated situations. So I sit there and I put the boundaries around me and I remind myself I have boundaries and I can see my boundaries. And I visualize the other people who have violated my boundaries outside of my boundaries. So it can really help you to gain a better inner sense of what's going on inside of you. Another practice to strengthen your boundary is to see your emotions as boundary messengers. So there are some emotions that often tell us when our boundaries have been crossed. While everyone's signals are different, some common emotions that may point to boundary violations include anger, resentment, feeling drained, or feeling exhausted. So let's look at anger for a moment. I know it often carries a bad reputation, especially if you've experienced harm from someone else's uncontrolled anger. But anger itself isn't dangerous. It's just an emotion and a powerful one. Anger alerts us to danger, injustice, or unmet need. Reconnecting with your danger in a healthy, grounded way is a deeply empowering step towards recovery. So if anger shows up, be curious and ask yourself, what do you feel angry about? Furthermore, you can ask yourself what boundary has been violated. Another practice you can try is the inner safe place visualization that I shared in the episode 5 Effective Trauma Counseling Techniques. Practicing the visualization regularly can also help you to increase your sense of inner safety and get a better idea of your boundaries. And here's a gentle reminder about growth. Setting healthy boundaries is a continuous evolving process. I would say I have firm and healthy boundaries, but this has come after years of healing work. It took time, patience, and commitment. Over the years, I've learned to trust myself and my emotions, to reconnect with my body signals, and to care for those parts of me that used to talk me out of my boundaries or found excuses for other people's inappropriate behavior. I share this to remind you that recovery is multidimensional and layered. Inner attunement with yourself and boundaries go hand in hand. Reconnecting with parts of you, trusting yourself, and trusting your intuition are interconnected. Furthermore, the more you can work with wounded aspects of you and really integrate these wounds, the clearer you get about your inner experience. And this all aspects together will really help you to create more well-being within yourself. Remember, recovery isn't a linear path, but every step you take, no matter how small it might feel for you, brings you closer to the safety, trust, and connection you deserve. Be patient, acknowledge your progress, and trust that each practice you embrace builds a stronger foundation for your well-being. If you found this episode helpful, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might benefit. Together, we continue to support each other on this healing journey, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon.